Mardi Gras' arrival to Port Canaveral isn't just about Carnival Cruise Line's newest and largest ship, or the first cruise ship with a roller coaster. It marks the arrival of the first cruise ship in North America to be powered by liquefied natural gas, or LNG. All told, Carnival Corporation will be adding 9 of these Excel-class ships to its fleet across North America and Europe as part of our eco-friendly green cruising initiative. Much work has been done to prepare for this day and this ship. Carnival has worked closely with the Meyer Turku shipyard in Finland, its energy and technology partner Shell, the team at Port Canaveral, and a host of other parties. But what exactly is LNG, and why is this a game changer? In its liquefied state, LNG is odorless, colorless, more environmentally friendly, and competitively priced compared to other fuels. It's considered to be on the forefront of marine industry fuel technology. And it maintains its liquefied nature by being refrigerated at a very cold temperature, minus 259 degrees Fahrenheit. It's important to remember, though, that passenger cruise ships generate a fraction of the overall emissions of the transportation sector. Nevertheless, every industry has a role to play in the worldwide effort to reduce emissions and their impact on global climate and public health. Among the cleanest fuels in the world, LNG significantly reduces emissions with cleaner exhaust. With the retirement of nearly 20 older vessels, the introduction of new, more efficient ships, and investments in other technologies and initiatives, we intend to continue to build on our pledge and continue to reduce emissions and exceed our goals. So, how does LNG work exactly? Just like other forms of fuel, LNG is converted into mechanical and electrical energy by engines and generators used to propel the ship. LNG not only powers Mardi Gras' propulsion system, utilizing azipods, it's used for all shipboard systems, from elevators, lighting, and computers, to galley equipment, and of course, Bolt, the first roller coaster at sea. There are currently a limited number of options worldwide to refuel an LNG ship, so working with our home port partners is critical. The transition to LNG necessitated a host of new technologies and processes, both on board and on shore. New engine designs, fuel containment systems, and the accompanying new engine parts required countless hours of training for our shipboard officers and engineers. Port Canaveral also constructed a new terminal to accommodate the LNG refueling process, as well as acquired purpose-built equipment like a new fireboat to support the LNG provider's tug and fueling barge, and expanded its firefighting training facility. Although Mardi Gras will be refueled every week, she is actually designed to sail for up to 14 days before having to refuel again. To fill Mardi Gras' 3 massive custom-built LNG tanks, a special fueling barge will meet up with the Mardi Gras in Port Canaveral to provide the ship with enough fuel for her week-long Caribbean and Bahamian itineraries. The refueling process is conducted with the highest procedures for safety and environmental protection. All of us know that cruising is anchored to the enjoyment of fresh air, clean, pristine water, and beautiful destinations. At Carnival, we will continue to invest in technologies and systems to reduce energy consumption and our environmental footprint as part of a company-wide commitment to preserving and protecting our water, air, and land resources. LNG is not the solution for all ships. It's still not readily available at all ports around the world. But it is an important step in our commitment to clean technology and meeting our goals for emission reductions. And it's an important new technology to propel our new class of Excel ships, and our company, into greater success and a stronger partnership with our ports and destinations. That's why we're proud to bring Mardi Gras to North America. So, whether you're enjoying a show, relaxing in your stateroom, or sipping a pina colada poolside, remember, it's LNG that powers the fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome. My name is Sarah Jane Kirkland, and it is my privilege to serve as President and CEO of Civic Leadership Institute. We're excited to have such a large audience join us this afternoon, both on this webinar and through our live stream on YouTube. Welcome to the Civic Leadership Institute State of the Cruise Industry event. Civic connects executive leaders across the Hampton Roads region with programs and events designed to educate and engage our alumni and participants on the complexities of the region, We connect leaders to large-scale initiatives where their talents, passions, and skill sets can help make incredible change, inspire creativity, and drive innovation. I'd like to take a moment to recognize some of our guests joining us today. From Senator Tim Kaine's office, we have Diane Kaufman. From Senator Mark Warner's office, Drew Lumpkin. The office of Congresswoman Elaine Luria, Charles Stuppard. Congressman Bobby Scott's office, Giselle Russell. Office of Delegate Alex Askew, Logan Capil. Secretary of Commerce and Trade, Brian Ball. Mayor Kenneth Alexander, City of Norfolk. Norfolk City Manager, Chip Byler. President and CEO of the Virginia Tourism Corporation, Rita McClenny, President of the Virginia Maritime Association, David White, President and CEO of the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce, Brian Stevens, and President and CEO of the Peninsula Chamber of Commerce, Bob McKenna. Many of you are just joining us this afternoon, but for context, today is a program day for the Civic Executive Class of 2021, and we've been engaging in a discussion about tourism much of the afternoon. And so it's truly a thrill to end the day with a very special guest, Christine Duffy, President of Carnival Cruise Line, who'll be joining us in just a moment to share her perspective on the cruise industry's plan to resume sailing. Please remember, you are welcome to ask questions during this session in your Q&A function. But before we begin, it's important to note the cruise industry is not just about the activity that occurs on board these beautiful vessels. It's also about the stevedores that handle the luggage and load the supplies while the ship is in port, the security teams and the terminal staff, the pilots that bring the ships in, and the line handlers that tie the ships up. They are all local jobs. It's also about the passengers that may have driven up to 250 miles to their cruise port. Perhaps they spend the night before their cruise in an area hotel or visit a local museum or attraction, or perhaps it's the family that eats breakfast in a local restaurant before boarding. In short, cruise tourism creates real jobs and has a tremendous economic impact. And to acknowledge how important this sector of our local economy is, I am very pleased to introduce a video by Senator Tim Kaine. Senator Kaine is in session this afternoon, but he wanted to lend his voice to this important conversation and introduce our special guest this afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. Senator Tim Kaine here. Thanks to the Civic Leadership Institute for inviting me to offer a few welcoming remarks. Tourism and hospitality are vital to the Hampton Roads economy. Before the pandemic, visitors to the area spent $5 billion a year. But we now know 2020 was a very hard year for the area and the industry, and that getting these industries back on track will be a key to a fast recovery. First and foremost is beating the pandemic, which is why vaccine funding and other health efforts were a key part of the recently passed American Rescue Plan. And thanks to state, local, and federal efforts, vaccine deployment is picking up. More than a third of Virginians have already received at least one dose. The American Rescue Plan also continued to provide substantial economic assistance to Virginians. This includes $6.9 billion in flexible relief to Virginia and its local governments. This funding can help with both addressing the public health crisis as well as economic recovery efforts. Hundreds of millions of dollars of that funding will be coming to the Hampton Roads area. The ARP also includes additional funding for Economic Development Administration grants with a specific set aside for tourism and travel related efforts. The plan provided direct assistance directly to Virginia households. Virginia will receive more than $9 billion in economic impact payments. Funding is provided that will also pay bills, but that money will be spent in local communities, helping local economies strengthen. The American Rescue Plan will be key in helping to get the country past the virus, getting our economy back on track, but we also know it won't be enough to get our total economy to where it needs to be. I'm back in Washington right now working on the next effort, rebuilding and enhancing America's critical infrastructure. That infrastructure could be absolutely crucial to the fate of our hospitality industry in Hampton Roads, Virginia, and the United States going forward. So thanks again for inviting me to welcome you all to today's discussion. It's now a pleasure to introduce Christine Duffy, President of Carnival Cruise Line. Christine, thank you for joining the business leadership in Hampton Roads this afternoon. I look forward to hearing the ideas today on how business leaders can help the tourism industry in our region and our country rebound from the efforts of the pandemic.
Thank you, Senator Kaine. We're grateful for your introduction. And I think that that is evidence that the tourism industry is critical to the economy of Virginia, and our legislators are committed to its recovery. Christine, welcome. We are delighted that you are here. And as Senator Kaine said, we appreciate you spending time with our leadership today. We are all proud to say that Carnival Cruise Line has been a partner here in Virginia since 2001, and we look forward to when you can resume sailings from the Commonwealth. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to ask you a question about how you all are. How's your team? How's everybody keeping, staying safe and well? How's it holding up? You all doing okay?
We are, Carnival Cruise Line, we are resilient, and our team is ready to start sailing again. We've got 17 ships actually back in the U.S. waters. And so we are ready to go just as soon as we can. But thank you for asking. It's been quite a journey, as you can imagine. 13 months that we've been on pause in our operation, and it was really just amazing teamwork, the process that we went through to get all of our team members home over a year ago. And now, again, we're just waiting to call them back.
I can't even imagine. And, we are so grateful to your team, by the way. We've been working with your office for many months to arrange this conversation. And truthfully, we didn't know how timely it was going to be. And, the cruise industry has been making national news recently, with the U.S. Travel Association calling for the federal government to lift restrictions on cruising. And we've learned recently that the Florida's governor is suing the CDC to lift its ban. So there's an awful lot going on. So my question is, obviously there's been no cruises, as you said, operating since the pandemic shut down the country. And I believe that the cruise industry is one of the only industries that's been unable to resume operations. So can you talk to us a little bit about the state of the industry a year into this pandemic?
Unfortunately, as you said, I think we are the only industry on earth that is not able to operate, at least out of the US, because the cruise lines have been operating outside of the US. Actually, we sailed about 400,000 guests from places in Europe and in Asia, and that's been successful. And much of that was done before vaccines were available. So we in the US are operating under what the CDC has called a conditional sail order, which was issued back at the end of October through October 31st of this year. And unfortunately, the conditional sail order, because it was issued in October, that was before vaccines. We have not had an update from the CDC to address the fact that vaccines exist today. People are getting vaccines. And certainly, we've also learned so much about COVID. There are also a lot of new treatments and therapies for people that might test positive or have symptoms from COVID. So we're really asking, and what you're seeing from U.S. Travel, from CLIA, which is the Cruise Line International Association, we're really asking for the conditional sail order as written back in October to be lifted, and for work to begin quickly to address where we are today and how we can get the cruise industry sailing from the U.S. In time for summer.
Yeah, thank you for that. And, you have talked about an awful lot about, obviously Carnival is America's cruise line. And you spoke recently in the news about the possibility that you may have to make that decision to move some of the vessels to other countries. Is that something that's still on the table, or are we still in the decision-making mode for that? I think, Christine, you're still muted.
We currently do not have plans to move our ships from U.S. home ports. As you said, We are America's cruise line. We sail from 14 U.S. home ports. We are a cruise line that keeps our ships in those U.S. ports all year round. And so there are a lot of small businesses, there are a lot of people who rely on their jobs in those communities on the cruise industry. So at this time, as I've said, I don't want to have to move ships out of our U.S. home ports, but at some point, if we can't get a workable solution, we may have no choice. But again, all of the cruise lines have to make their own decisions based on what's right for them and for their guests. And frankly, for many of our guests, the fact that our ships are here in the US make it very convenient and affordable and accessible. So at this time, we're holding on with all the support that we're hearing, as you mentioned, from the governor of Florida, from many of the senators, as well as in California. We're working hard to try and get cruising to restart.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Christine. And just a reminder to our guests, you are welcome to press to enter into the Q&A function any questions that you have, so we can pose those to Christine a little bit later on in this session. You touched a little bit earlier on about, obviously your crew members, you managed to bring them back to their home countries at the very beginning of the pandemic, and now you're working to bring everybody back. Having lived and worked on cruise ships for many, many years, I'm actually a perfect example of how, crew members come from all around the world. So, how does that change, or what do you have to put into the equation there in terms of your planning and your preparation to be able to resume sailing? I can only the logistics nightmare of that.
Well, right now we have our ships at what we call minimum manning for operations, and that is probably between 100 and 125 crew members on each ship. And as you know, to be ready for guests, that involves bringing 1,000 crew members back, 800 crew members on some of our ships. And so we've not begun that process because we don't have clarity into what the requirements will be for us to bring crew back on board and for us to be able to sail. First and foremost, though, the most important priority for us at Carnival Cruise Line and for our corporation is to ensure that we keep our guests and our crew healthy and safe. And so, again, we want to follow, the guidelines that are required to be able to operate in a safe way. We've already addressed and put forward a number of protocols that all of the cruise lines had agreed to back in the fall. And so, again, we're keeping in touch with our crew members. We know, as you said, we have crew members from over 120 countries. We keep in touch with them on a very regular basis. I do a lot of video communication. We're certainly encouraging all of our crew members, if they're able to get a vaccine in their home country, that they do so for their own health. But we also recognize that not everyone has access to a vaccine at this time. So, we are optimistic that our crew members are ready to come back, and we keep in regular communication.
Thanks, Christine. And, speaking about, obviously, the collaboration you talked about earlier on with the cruise lines, has the pandemic changed how the industry overall collaborates with each other? Have you worked to share some best practices and maybe things like technology, for example, that might ultimately help the cruise industry to recover sooner and become more resilient for future challenges that we might have? How has the industry managed to kind of pull together on that?
Well, you may know that before I joined Carnival Cruise Line, I actually ran the Cruise Industry Association, known as CLIA. And so that's one of the things we don't compete with. Our cruise lines work together on a regular basis with our experts that reside in every cruise line, people from the maritime industry, public health, medical. And so when it comes to safety, health, and well-being of our guests and crew, we work together as CLIA. Now, different cruise lines have taken different positions on some of the restart plans. But as I said, back in the fall, we had all come together and presented to the CDC a proposal of the protocols that we had all collectively agreed with. And obviously Carnival Corporation, which Carnival Cruise Line is part of, we have 8 other brands. And so many of those brands are actually part of the groups that had begun sailing while we have not been able to sail here. Our Chief Operations Officer, Neil Palumbo, who was formerly the president of Costa Cruise Line, our Italian sister brand, was one of the very first cruise lines to begin operating. And so Neil has personally directed and led his team to implement many of these new protocols and procedures, and also delivered the first Costa XL ship, which is powered by LNG, which you saw in the video that we started the program with.
That's exciting. Thanks, Christine. You know, I think we're all crossing our fingers for the travel industry to recover, but also crossing our fingers that we're all going to be able to get on a cruise ship in July. So at that point, could I ask you about what you feel like might be different with the onboard experience? And, you know, maybe perhaps more broadly, post-pandemic and what will the new normal look like? You know, obviously this has changed right now, but do you foresee this might change the onboard experience for the long term with the pandemic?
If I could answer that question, you know, I think one thing we've learned this past year is that things are evolving quickly. If we go back a year ago, I don't think people would have expected that we would have vaccines already in people's arms at this point at the volumes that we're seeing now. So it's evolving very quickly. I don't want to make predictions about what will or won't be required. We think that there will be different requirements when we first start up, which is normal, and we will all be more conservative. We will likely constrain capacity, which is really occupancy, as we restart, because we've not been sailing for over a year. And so I think there will be new procedures, there will be new protocols, and we'll start out slowly to make sure that we're able to incorporate and manage. And there's always learnings. The advantage for us, as I said, is we have sister brands in Europe and in other parts of the world that are already operating. So we're learning a lot from them. But I don't want to make any predictions. I'm hopeful that I think for all of us in the long run, we'll be able to get back to what we all think would be the right normal to have a great cruise vacation experience again.
That's great. Thank you. You know, I understand that Carnival's 2022 sales are through the roof and already higher, in fact, than in 2019 before the pandemic. So do you think you could perhaps break that down? Is it, you know, perhaps was it pricing that was dramatically dropped, or do you think that it's more along the lines of that pent up demand? Rita McClenny earlier on today said it's called revenge travel. People are taking revenge on COVID. So I wondered if you could maybe talk a little bit about that and what your thoughts are.
Well, as I've said to my team repeatedly, the silver lining for us and what's really sustained all of us throughout this terrible pandemic is the support and the anticipation and excitement from our guests who just cannot wait to get back to cruising again. And no matter how many cruises we've canceled, we've had 3.8 million guests who have been booked on a cruise that we've had to cancel. And you can imagine the disappointment along with all of the work that comes along with that kind of processing. But our teams have done a great job, and the guests have been extremely, extremely supportive, and they want to get back to sailing again. You heard on the call that Arnold Donald, our corporation, had last week with the investment community, that our booking pace is better for 2022 than it was in 2019, and 2019 was one of our best years. So demand is very strong, and I agree. I think it's certainly for cruise. I think in general, coming out of this, people have a whole new appreciation for when you talk about freedom of movement, freedom to travel, and not being able to do that as you would like, really, I think has even just created that much more demand to get back to travel, and specifically, and fortunately for us, cruising with Carnival.
Thanks, Christine. So, I said Rita McClenny early on. I should explain to everybody, Rita is the president and CEO for the Virginia Tourism Corporation here. And she spoke to our group earlier on. Our executive leadership program had a wonderful session on local tourism and how the business community can kind of support that. Our participants have definitely gained a better perspective of the impact of tourism. But as I mentioned in the introduction, we know it's not just about the direct on-site operation. It has an impact on the region's supply chain, generating jobs in local tourism, companies in manufacturing, in agriculture, transportation, aviation, lodging, I mean, you name it, travel agencies, food and beverage. And that's not just the case in the cruise capital of the world. Miami, of course, is right here in Virginia too. So at this point, I thought we'd show a very quick video that captures what a day in the life is like when a cruise ship comes to town. This video was taken a few years ago right here in downtown Norfolk at Nauticus. Hopefully we have the video to show in a few minutes. If not, we can take questions.
3,400 passengers coming on and going off, patronizing the businesses that are local here, the airports, the taxis, the hotels. It's so important. It brings 10 hours of work into this port every week.
Welcome back to Norfolk. Please proceed through the gates directly to Customs, where you'll need your passport and Customs declaration form filled out completely for the Customs officer.
We drove down here from Mesa, Arizona to take my daughter on a cruise to the Caribbean to celebrate her entry into nurses training school.
From Cincinnati, Ohio. It was a 9-hour drive here. It was really easy to get here once we got in this area. Stayed at the Marriott last night. It was really nice. Parking there, really convenient.
I'm Robert. This is my wife Irene, and we're getting ready to board Carnival Glory. This is about the 5th cruise we've taken out of Norfolk, and all 5 have been very pleasant experiences.
Well, for us, staying in the hotel was absolutely amazing. The logistics were fantastic. Just coming in, the check-in process was absolutely easy. After checking in, staying the night, the beds were comfortable, and then the actual walk from the hotel to the cruise line was absolutely amazing. Yeah, this is it. This is definitely it. Norfolk has it happening when it comes to cruises.
I happen to really, really love that video. So what we're going to do is actually a fun little poll. We like to do a little bit of audience participation here. So in a few minutes, our team's going to actually launch a poll. So audience, you will see options that's going to pop up on your screen in a few moments there. And the question is, have you cruised from Norfolk before? The answer is yes, I have. No, I have not. Or I have cruised I have cruised before, but not from Norfolk. So put those polls in, and in a few minutes, we will find the results out. I'm hoping that we get a good turnout for Norfolk because we need to support this local home port. I hope you all are listening to that. All right, are we ready to end the poll? What do you think, Amesa? I think we can probably do it. So it looks like the results are in. It's almost neck and neck on no, I have not taken a cruise out of Norfolk before, but they have cruised from somewhere else. So that's kind of interesting. I like it. Thank you so much. So with that being said, talking about Norfolk, I hope that you don't mind. I am actually going to introduce the executive director for Nauticus, and he is going to ask a question for you. But for those of you in the audience, I know you know this. This is my husband, Stephen. He and I actually both met on Carnival Cruise Line. So we are, as Christine said to me earlier on, we are Carnival alumni. So Stephen, would you mind taking the virtual mic, sir?
Sure. Thank you, Sarah Jane. I appreciate it very much. Christine, welcome. It's good to see you again, even though it's virtually. But we are glad you're here with us today. This is a big day for us, and we know that obviously you've got a lot going on. My question, as you can imagine, it's a bit more specific. It seems like 100 years ago, but honestly, it was just a month before this pandemic hit when your team was here in Norfolk. We were next door, and here in Nauticus, we were next door to the cruise terminal, and we were celebrating really a first for us. It was a 5-year contract between our city and you all, and we were so excited. And then, of course, the world changed. But we are looking forward to many, many more years of working with you all. But I guess my question for you today, for those legislators that are on the call this afternoon and the business community, what are you all looking for in a port partner? What's an ideal partner for you? And really, I guess the follow-up to that is, what can we do as a community to help you all?
Well, I think it's a great question, but I think that if you look at Norfolk, I would hold Norfolk up as doing a lot of the right things that led us to the point where we had that 5-year contract. So I, was in Norfolk when we brought Carnival Sunrise back for her very first reveal in the US after her transformation. And I think she was actually, when she was Carnival Triumph, was a ship that had sailed from Norfolk as well. Accessibility is really important to us. As I said before, with 14 US home ports, a number of our guests will drive to a port. And as you saw from the video, people who will drive 9 hours, or people driving from Arizona to take their cruise because maybe there's somebody in their family that's close by. So accessibility is really important. I think the other thing that the video highlighted, which people don't always consider, is many people come in the day before or might spend a weekend or a night after their cruise in the community. So having the hotels and infrastructure where it's a fun experience, it's just part of the whole vacation that I come in and people are excited, they stay in the hotel, they go out to dinner, they see the sights, and maybe they get to experience a town or a community that they've never been before. And we know that a lot of people will say, hey, this was great, let's come back. As we said, Florida is certainly the capital of the cruise industry. We know lots and lots of people take a cruise if they want to go to Alaska, but many people don't appreciate the number of communities like Norfolk who have been able over time to build up a reputation and be able to become a strong market for us, from where people can drive, or people find it very accessible and much easier than having to get on a plane or having to go into a big city, especially, and again, from the video, there's lots of multi-generational travel that's happening these days where people are coming together where they may live in lots of different places. And so accessibility is really important. Certainly the cruise terminal and the experience and the hospitality that people receive in a community is very important to us. And Norfolk gets, A+ marks for that. And the investment that you made. I mean, a lot of it is about logistics, our ability to provision a ship, our ability to rely on the terminal and the operators there to have what we need to be able to turn the ships around quickly. And so, I want to thank everybody that's on this call for investing in the upgrade of the passenger boarding bridge. That, as you know, was really a need for us to be able to make the commitment that we did. And now our plan will be to bring Carnival Magic to Norfolk, which will be the largest ship that you'll have home porting in Norfolk, which again is really this building to be able to support and fill that ship when she's in Norfolk.
Christine, it occurs to me, the video highlighted, the passenger experience, and that's so important. But as you know very well, Sarah Jane and I worked and lived on these cruise ships, and we moved all around the country and really all around the world. And no one ever talks about the crew. And, the crew members that are on these ships on a vessel the size of the Carnival Magic, I think 1,700 crew members, and they're getting off into our community, and they're having lunch, and they're shopping in our gift shops, and they're coming to Nauticus on the Battleship Wisconsin or whatever they're doing. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the impact of the crew, because I feel like next year the Magic's coming in. We're so excited. That's about 80,000 passengers for us in terms of embarking and debarking, but the crew is so important. I wonder if you could touch on that just for a second.
Well, you're absolutely right, and it's a great point. It's been raised more recently in other communities, because people don't always think about the economic impact that the crew themselves bring into the local communities. As you know, both of you from working at Carnival, when you're on a ship and they have free time, they're shopping, they're eating, they're sending things home to their families. And so the crew are really part of the experience as well as the guests. And the crew will often talk with the guests about what a great community is and where to go and where the good places are to eat. So I think with the deployment that we'll have from Carnival Magic, we're going to bring tens of thousands of people into Norfolk, and we're going to be starting. We certainly look forward to May of 2022 with 11 4 to 8 day voyages, and in May, June, and October. Magic is going to be going into a dry dock this May. And so she's a terrific ship, and I think you'll all be really proud and excited to have her in your community.
Well, Christine, thank you. We're grateful for the partnership. We appreciate you being here today. And Kirkland, I will pass the virtual mic back to you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you, Stephen. We do appreciate all that you do to help to support the cruise industry here in Hampton Roads. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take some of the questions from the audience, if that's okay, Christine. One of the questions actually, we may as well keep on the topic of Norfolk, actually. Jim Kipperham, I'm sorry if I mispronounce names, he asked, will Carnival be expanding the future itineraries that are offered from Norfolk? For example, perhaps some Canada, New England itineraries. I wondered if you might be able to talk a little bit about the decision-making process on where the ships go.
Well, as you know, it's really based on demand, and we have itinerary planning and deployment. Hopefully Canada will open up again one day to cruising. It was pretty remarkable that they announced that they weren't going to allow cruising until February 28th of 2022. So again, a lot of it is what can we count on, and it also the experience that we have. So again, we have really been able to build up the ships and the calls that we make in Norfolk. And Norfolk is actually, I think when you look at up and coming markets for us, which is why you see the bigger ship coming in. Mobile, Alabama is another example where we had a ship and the ship went away. Now we've got a ship back there again. So it's the message that I'm delivering to a lot of the policymakers and members of Congress that we're speaking with, because people don't think about places like Norfolk or Alabama or many of the, Charleston or Baltimore, where we have ships and the local communities really do benefit economically, and also from all the vacationers that come in before or stay after their cruise.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm not sure if you can see the chat, but there's a number of people that are cruising on the Carnival Magic in 2022. So they're definitely supporting locally. So with that to hear.
That's great.
Speaking on the lines of the country restrictions, Len Fleisig had a question about foreign country restrictions, such as in place in Vancouver, Canada, and they've disrupted the Alaska travel, which was what you just mentioned there. And he said, have similar restrictions in countries along your routes affected your planning in any way?
I mean, mainly for us, it's been Canada and related to Alaska. Most of the Caribbean is open and, working with us on what their requirements are, because it's not only what the requirements are in the home port, but of course, then the destinations where we take our ship. As I said earlier, the UK is opening back up to cruise in May, and they've had very tough restrictions and lockdowns. But even in the UK, we will have some of our sister brands sailing, and there'll be UK guests only. And some cruise lines will require or mandate vaccines, others are not. And again, there have been 400,000 people that have taken a cruise without vaccines. So we feel that we'll be able to proceed just as soon as we get some better and clearer guidance from the CDC.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. There was a number of questions actually in the chat about whether or not you all are going to ask for guests to be vaccinated, and you're hanging on right now to work out what the CDC's recommendations are. And so everybody should stay tuned and check out the website and just kind of stay connected to Carnival to see what the next steps are, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
Well, I think the message that I want to share is we are not going to mandate vaccines at Carnival. Our view at this point is we don't want to be treated any differently than the rest of travel and tourism and entertainment. And if people can go into a casino resort hotel and sleep in the hotel and play in the casino and have dinner and go shopping, then without a vaccine, then why treat the cruise lines differently? As you know, we have medical facilities on board. We have a lot of protocols. Again, our primary commitment is to make sure that we keep people safe. And so at this point, we are encouraging people to get a vaccine. I got my vaccine, and I think that's definitely the way to go, but that is a choice that people will have to make. And unless it's a mandate from CDC, it's not something that we've introduced at this point for Carnival Cruise Line.
Thanks, Christine. Jonathan Kelly asked a very interesting question here. He's saying in his industry, probably like most industries, they found some good or unexpected positives that have surfaced from the pandemic, while you're able to take some time to kind of look at things from a different perspective. Have you found any silver linings in your industry as well during that time frame where things were maybe we were obviously unable to sail?
Well, the silver lining has been that we've been able to support all of this process that we've had, of course, with the number of cruises that we've had to cancel. Our teams on board, even though they're at minimum manning, have done phenomenal work in maintaining the ship. We're not an airplane where you can just park a plane in the desert if you don't need the capacity. We have to keep our ships operating. We have to keep our ships maintained and ship shape. And doing that with, again, minimum manning was a big responsibility, and our teams on board have just done great work. Sometimes they've turned it into a competition. As I said earlier, we've done a lot of communication, we've done a lot of training and development, and I think we also are just really have all been amazed at how quickly we were able to move from doing everything in person in the office to remote. Especially with groups like our contact center who take so many calls from guests. So we've learned a lot. I think we are all much more resilient as a result of this pandemic, and more grateful for the things that we may have taken for granted in the past. Like watching that video actually was making me feel very nostalgic, and just thinking about how much fun it is to take a cruise. And I think that our guests feel the same way, fortunately.
I agree. And I have to say, it was kind of strange seeing that many people together as well. We've been without it for so long, but it did make me feel that I wanted to get back onto that ship very quickly. This is kind of an interesting question. It's from Erica Donahue. We think about the onboard experience, but also when the guests are traveling to all of these different ports, they take these fantastic shore excursions. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how are you working with all of the different countries that you are about to go and visit to work out what their procedures are going to be and what their capacity is? How do you go about that to make sure the guest experience on the islands is going to be just as good as it is when they're on the vessels?
Well, that's been an ongoing, evolving process as well, because earlier on, we expected that there would be more limitations than what there may ultimately be, again, based on vaccines and based on treatments. So we are working with all of the destinations, with tour operators, our ground handlers. They all received information about what our procedures and protocols would be and have to agree to those, which include things like mask wearing and physical distancing. And also, where were we taking guests to avoid crowds indoors? Fortunately for us, with Caribbean cruising, most of the activities are outdoors. And most people want to be at the beach, near a beach, on a beach, in a pool. And so we've got all of that, and now it's really a process of keeping it updated given the changes that we're seeing and the change in requirements from specific destinations.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. And I'm going to switch gears on us a little tiny bit here. We're a leadership organization, and you are a leading advocate when it comes down to women's leadership in the travel industry. You're a member of the Committee of 200, an organization that is the world's most successful women in business leaders. So what advice do you have for our business leaders here today on creating an inclusive environment to grow and nurture that up and coming talent?
Well, I think one of the unfortunate things coming out of the pandemic is there are more women that are leaving the workforce. And I think that it's even more important than ever that anyone that's in a position of leadership or management understand the burden sometimes that women take on when they've got, and it's not just women with children. There's also a lot of people who are caretakers for elderly parents. And so I think that we encourage women to be clear about what you need. I think sometimes people are afraid to speak up and talk to their manager or leader about what they need to be able to continue to do their work and to grow. And again, I think also managers were asking and encouraging people, have those conversations. I do think as a result of this pandemic, there is much greater awareness at leadership across companies that we have to think about our people and their lives, that work life and personal life, there's not a big wall. And I think the more empathy and the more understanding, flexibility, which I do think is going to be an outcome of the ability now that we've seen that you can work remotely, people are actually more productive. They're working more sometimes, but they're working on their own terms. And I think that's something that's really important for women. I also think it's important as women are thinking about their career and how you continue to rise in your company, that you be vocal about what you're really passionate about and be assertive and be clear. So I think if anything today compared to maybe when I started my career 30 years ago, I think this is a real conversation that people are more open to, more sensitive to. And the bottom line, one of the big risks that we're seeing as travel resumes, there's a labor shortage. Hotels, theme parks, executives are talking about the fact that they can't find people for the jobs that they have. So I also think that we can't afford to have people leaving the workforce, particularly in the travel and hospitality industry that has been so devastated by this pandemic, I think more than any other industry. But policymakers and corporate leaders are very focused on the fact that this is a risk and that we've got to do better in how we attract, but also to retain the talent that we have, and that includes women.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And as a follow-up, actually, Lynn Clements had talked about the diverse crew that you have on board. And, you know, what have you done during the shutdown in particular to work with the staff on the discussion on diversity and inclusion? I know for our community here in Hampton Roads, that is absolutely a top priority when it comes down to the recovery and resilience of our region. So could you talk a little bit about that from your perspective and with Carnival?
Well, the diversity, equity, and inclusion discussions that have happened in our country this past year have also happened, I think, in certainly in our company. As you said at the start, I often look at the ships and say, wow, if we could only have every business be as diverse as the cruise industry. 120 countries are represented. People are working together and living together. But we too have to do a better job. While we have diversity in our numbers, we want to see more women and more minorities being able to rise to positions of leadership. So we have a very concerted effort with our cadet programs to attract and bring women and other minorities in and work with them to develop them to grow. Our head of our marine operation, who comes from Norway, Lars, was an advocate and a champion really for diversity when he joined Carnival several years ago in the US. And last year we held a conference in January in Miami for all of our women officers that are on board the ships, and brought them all together. And we had a great conversation about what was it that we needed to do to better support them, what was standing in the way for them in their own minds from being able to continue to rise in the organization. And it was a great event. So again, opening the lines of communication is so important, being very purposeful, and I think also providing education. There's a lot of confusion. I don't think it's always clear for people when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. What does that really mean? It's not just about numbers. It's about meaningful roles for people and having true diversity of thinking that we bring into the boardroom and into the office and onto our ships.
I think Carnival has always been incredible about that. I know from my personal experience, it was such a diverse experience. I was on the ships at the age of 19, and I learned so much about all of these different nationalities and different personalities. It was a fabulous experience. So I think you all do such a fantastic job. Now we're going to just finalize with a question on crisis management, because obviously we have entered and we are hopefully on the exit path of the pandemic. You were, as you said, you became president of CLIA, the Cruise Lines International Association, shortly before the Costa Concordia ran aground off the coast of Italy in 2012. And I think we all remember that incident. And now you're leading Carnival, the world's most recognized cruise line, through a pandemic and economic crisis like no one has ever seen before. So for these business leaders on this call today, do you have any advice for our leadership on crisis management and navigating through tough times?
Well, I think for me, number one is communication. And no matter how many times you think you've communicated, engaging with our people, being clear about what is happening is always important, but it's even more important when there's crisis. As we know, with today's 24/7 media, social media, there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so it's important that our people hear from us directly and know what the facts are, and that we do that frequently enough where people feel that they are part of the organization in a way that they can represent for themselves and to others they're talking to about what's actually fact versus what's not. And so communication has been really key. I've said being empathetic, because again, in this pandemic, we've gone through so many situations that people have had to encounter personally, and being there for our employees, and whether that's ship or shore, and even hailing back to what happened in 2012, jumping in and really just every day waking up and being ready to take on whatever is going to happen, because whenever there's a crisis, you're really navigating in waters that are unfamiliar. And so being there every day, bringing the right energy and being positive. I mean, this has been a long pause, but it's important that people see leaders who are positive and confident and realistic. So we want to be transparent, but we also want to make sure that we bring the organization and people along with us, and that we tell our story. Frankly, a lot of this has been communicating to policymakers and government officials who may not always have the understanding or awareness on the impact of some of the decisions that get made.
Well, I thank you for that. And I do think you have been an incredible spokesperson for the cruise line industry to work on the exit strategy from this pandemic to resumption of sailing for all of the cruise lines. So I personally want to say thank you to you for that. I can't believe this hour has gone by so fast. How did that even happen? I want to thank our audience for those amazing questions. And Christine, stay with us for a few moments. I really want to thank you again for your time and for your work in this incredible industry. I feel encouraged by the news that we've heard today, and I look forward to supporting the return of the cruise line industry to Hampton Roads. I also want to thank your Carnival team for all of their help in making sure this event would be a success. We've been working on this for a little while, and I really appreciate all of their hard work. I'm grateful to our civic leadership team, Megan Shuford and Amasa Smith, for their hard work and preparation. And a special thanks goes out to our Civic Scholar alumnus, Eric Justice and Destiny Harrell, for their assistance behind the scenes today. It is now my honor to welcome to the virtual stage the Chair for Civic's Board of Directors and Vice President for Sustainability with the Port of Virginia, Kit Chope. Kit, the virtual floor is yours, sir.
Well, thanks, Sarah Jane. And Christine, this has been a real treat. Thank you so much for your sharing your time and engaging in this important and very interesting conversation. And we truly appreciate the ongoing partnership between Carnival Cruise Line and our region. And all of us are looking forward to seeing your ships grace the skyline in Norfolk once again very soon. Thanks also to all of our business leaders and civic alums who have attended this session today. I firmly believe that each one of us has an opportunity as well as an obligation to support this region's economic recovery, especially the very, very hard-hit tourism industry. That includes identifying and implementing innovative solutions to become more resilient to future crises and disruptive events. So for those of you who've enjoyed a long relationship with us, I hope you agree that throughout the pandemic, we've continued to provide you with outstanding access both to the challenges facing our storied region, as well as the decision makers and leaders who are most engaged across Hampton Roads and well beyond. Your continued investment in Civic Leadership Institute is important so we can continue to foster those strong regional relationships that produce regional results. Again, thanks to all of our business community members who joined us for our State of the Cruise Industry virtual event. Christine, again, on behalf of our entire board of directors and staff at Civic, we thank you for your insights. This has been a wonderful afternoon and evening. Stay safe and well, everyone, and have a good evening. Good night.
Thank you so much. And Sarah Jane, and I am so proud of you. So talking about women leaders, so you've done a great job moderating. That's always the harder part than the person answering the questions. So congratulations to you. And Chris, thank you for all of your partnership and support. We can't wait to get back to Norfolk with our cruise ship, and I hope it will be sooner than later, but thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Christine. It's good to see you. I'll come back to Carnival sometime soon.
All right.
Bye. Thanks. Bye, everybody. Have a great night.